right on the dotted line. Let Philadelphia freedom ring and patriotic voices sing. Red, white, blue, never give up. You represent America.
Hoping and praying for a brighter day. I listen to my heart and I obey. How can I see it any other way? I'm looking at life with my own eyes.
Why, Keimer? Fancy seeing you here, Meredith. I was just picking up some supplies for my shop. It has only been a few weeks since you departed from my printing business. I take it you are well?
I was just picking up some supplies myself. Well, yes, I've been quite well indeed. Benjamin and I have begun a new project together. What a stroke of good luck that I met Ben while working in your business. That man is one of the most intelligent I've ever met, although given how much he reads, I shouldn't be at all surprised. His thoughts are quite enlightened and astute. Once he said to me, so convenient a thing it is to be a reasonable creature, since it enables one to find or make a reason for everything one has a mind to do. How perceptive of him. I feel privileged to have learned all I know about printing from him. What am I saying? You know all this. You hired the man.
I very much doubt that you believe I feel the same about Franklin. We worked together for years, as I was one of the first to ever hire Franklin in the printing business. I found him work to do, even with the small, shabby shop I had at the time. In the early days, before he left for London, we used to debate questions with his Socratic method. He was quite supercilious even then, asking me questions intended simply to trick me. I would often ask him, "What do you intend to infer from that?" Each time he asked me a question, as I was cautious of his attempts to prove me wrong. Franklin was a major proponent of logical thinking methods, using various ways of reasoning through arguments to connect far-fetched ideas to whatever point he was trying to prove. I must admit that at the time I found him quite capable, but he was also rather keen to change my habits. I kept the Sabbath, as you know, and Franklin did not at all approve. He was also a vegetarian and converted me into one for 3 whole months. That man was far too haughty in his own ways. Once he returned to Philadelphia from his voyage to London, my printing house was flourishing. Of course, Franklin again requested employment, and I believe this is when you and he were first acquainted.
That is correct.
At first, I offered him quite a bit of money and a position of management at the shop. A generous gesture of me, to be sure. Franklin, the uppity fellow that he is, sought better employment, but upon finding none, he returned to work for me. I put him to work training the less experienced men in the business, but it soon became clear that I was paying him far more than I could afford, even given my success. I never treated the man with anything but the most utmost civility and respect, for at the time I knew nothing of his perfidy. I trust you know exactly what I am speaking of, yes?
Keimer, you must understand. Ben was quite upset after you, from what he told me, informed him that he was too costly for you to continue to pay, and then asked him to leave the printing house. He determined that you would most probably fail in running your print shop, as you were sloppy in bookkeeping, and he believed that he and I together would be able to enter a profitable partnership in printing. Keimer, my friend, you must believe that I say this not out of a desire to hurt you, but out of a desire to be honest. Ben and I are doing only what we believe is best for us, and it pains me that you must suffer from it.
You and Franklin are perfect together, both execrable specimen who care only for your own profit and gain. I was good to you both, and now we are competition. Good day, Meredith. I wish I could say it was nice to see you.
What a spiteful man, that Keimer.
Well, they should have some ink here. Oh, hello, fine fellow. Would you happen to be employed here?
No, I'm not. The fellow himself seems to be out of the shop.
Oh, what a shame. You see, I was quite engrossed in my newest essay when my inkwell was depleted.
That's quite unfortunate, I do admit. So, you are a writer, I presume?
Yes, James Ralph. I have authored quite a few essays. You've heard of my History of England?
Hello, fine fellow, how goes it?
I've been drinking.
Back at the bottle again, eh? It's been a while since I last saw you.
To be sure. After Franklin and I had a falling out in New York,
Franklin, did you say? Ben Franklin?
the one and only.
You're acquainted with the man?
Good God, man! I am an acquaintance with a Ben Franklin. I believe the one and the same. A scallywag, a cad, a more unscrupulous fellow I never met.
On what basis do you make such accusations?
Yes, how now? In all my expectations with Franklin, he was quite an upright fellow. a bit of a sissy, granted, and never one for a good time, but he had a heart almost as deep as his purse.
Such is to be taken for granted when speaking of a man of such virtue, not to mention he's quite the businessman.
A pretty part he played to you, friend. Benjamin Franklin is the lowest of the low. He bleeds not the red fountain as mortal men do, but pure evil. His heart has been torn from his chest, and in its place there is only darkness.
I see.
You cannot possibly believe such a thing.
You do not believe me, I can see, but listen here, man. I first came into acquaintance with Franklin in Philadelphia, and we got on well together, and eventually embarked on a passage to England. He was a good sort, or so I thought, as he was free with his wealth, and we got on well together for a time.
Yes, I always found Franklin to be quite a good source of income.
It seems that you do not have any taste for proper men.
As I was saying, we got on well for a time, as he kept me in wealth, although he was always a bit too rational for my taste. He wouldn't know a pure art form if it hit him in the face, and he was always discouraging me for my poetry. Arrogant, condescending rapscallion. Once in London I found a lovely milliner, and was soon engaged. But, you see, I did not have funds enough for a wife, and so I went away to work as a boy's schoolmaster, assuming Franklin's name and entrusting my beloved to his care. All was well, and after a time I was able to return to my beloved. But what should I learn from that sweet creature upon my return? But that Franklin, my friend, my most intimate confidant, had made advances on her. A no-good, honorless scoundrel he is. Do not be fooled. If I may take some consolation from his derelict conduct, it is that he had paid for it beforehand, and I never paid him back a cent.
Me either, friend. I thank you for giving me cause to clear my conscience of such liberties. You have my pity, dear fellow. Here, have a drink. You know, I never did feel quite right about that Franklin fellow. A man that can't stand to have a drink is a man not to be trusted, as I always say. Come to think of it, his only good quality he kept in his pocketbook.
What loyalty this is between friends. I am quite aghast at this behavior. When did you confirm that Franklin had, in fact, done such a thing? Your wife didn't tell you, surely.
How dare you question the integrity of my wife? In fact, she was the informant.
Ah, I see. Do you wish that Franklin's character be defamed through this situation?
Here, here! I do not wish to do anything but reveal the truth.
Well then, good man, let this situation here be resolved, and I carry on with my bottle. Onward! Ah. Mr. Franklin, how nice to see you here.
Always a pleasure, Miss Reed.
How have you been, Mr. Franklin? I believe it has been way too long.
Well, Miss Reed, firstly I wish to offer you my condolences on the untimely end of your marriage. A very bleak affair, to be sure. I am shamefaced to stand next to you, knowing the bad turn my blackguard of a son has dealt you.
It was never a promising match to begin with, sir, and I do not wish to speak ill of Ben, but to be completely honest, when he left to London without a backwards glance, leaving me naught but empty promises, I was devastated. All I had to subsist upon was one measly letter for over a year, and even that containing no shred of compassion, no tender feelings at all. Nothing but vague warnings, written in much haste, not even a full page, just to say that he shall not soon return. The nerve! And what is a poor penniless girl to do? I was desolate, and out of desperation my friends persuaded me to enter into a hasty match with our Rogers, the worthless potter that he was. Oh me.
Yes, I knew my son was too hasty and headstrong to be trusted. He had not the responsibility to treat a woman right. I was right in denying him his print shop. A man has to prove his worth in this world, not rely on his father to set him up.
Oh, but Mr. Franklin, do not be too harsh with Ben. He did learn a great deal about his business in London. He is very diligent, you know. He worked for a whole year at Palmer's, a very prestigious printing house, you know.
Yes, of course that little braggart told me of his great escapades. I suppose you know he conceived himself a great thinker, writing that piece of metaphysical trash, a dissertation on liberty and necessity, pleasure, and pain.
Oh, but you know, that has always been his personality. He has a great love of books, literature, and knowledge in general. There's no fault in that, surely.
Perhaps you are right. I do know that he enjoyed a great deal of authority among the men at the printing house, and endeavored to edify their rough habits. It would seem that he purged some of their predilection towards the drink. I have always admired that my son does not drink excessively.
Yes, one of his finer qualities, to be sure. Yet you do upbraid him so.
Any young man, especially one of my son's temperament, needs a strong hand of guidance. Ben has always had too high an opinion of himself. Why, just before he went to London this past year, he visited us in Boston. A joyous sight he was to his mother's sore eyes, and the rest of the family as well. All, that is, except James. Why my eldest son and Ben were never to get on amiably is a quandary that has always flummoxed me. That is besides the point, however. Ben arrived in high fashion, of course, and upon finding that James was engaged at the print shop, and should be so until nightfall, went directly to call upon him. I was not present for the ensuing charade, although James later gave me the full account. To hear James tell of it, Ben marched into the shop with all the pomp and circumstance he could never have mustered under James's apprenticeship, and proceeded to lay hard money on the table so that the pressman might ogle at his wealth. The nerve! I do believe that James has not spoken to Ben since, and understandably so. It is not right that a man should be thus shamed in his place of work.
Oh, yes, that is terrible, but I'm sure he didn't mean.
Yes, and Ben is a good boy. I do believe he'll make a name for himself someday, all on his own merit, of course, with what little he's been given.
Yes, what a man he is. I do miss him so. Our love is boundless, yet we are divided by an ocean of pain.
My son's conduct is regrettable, to be sure, but I know it is in his nature to slight those he loves. He is far too logical for his own good, but I do believe that he cares deeply for you. Have faith, Miss Reed. There is hope for you two yet.
You are too kind. That means more than you could know.
Ben has always been such an intelligent boy. What a pity that he could not find it within himself to love Miss Reed. But he was just a young lad when he embarked to make a name for himself in Philadelphia. I was right not to set him up immediately after his trip home to Boston. He was far too headstrong and boastful a boy. Yet I do regret that he found it necessary to depart to England for a full year without giving that poor girl a backward glance. Alas! His conduct there was less than noble, especially in his advances towards Ralph's promised one. I did not raise such a cold, spiteful creature. Yet he has redeemed himself, and I must admit I am proud of his achievements. Starting from nothing, standing on his own merit, and securing his own future with his own printing shop. Even I must admit that I am impressed. He has come a long way, and now I see that he has grown into a fine, upstanding gentleman. Now I must take my leave. I thank you for your attention and wish you a wonderful weekend.